Hey guys, and welcome back again for another episode of the R6. On the last episode I said I was going to chuck on the fairing kit on the bike, but since having another look at the rear sets, last episode I called them drop pack, they were. But yeah, so the rear sets here, I've had another look at these and I think I might chuck these on first or have a muck around with them before I put the fairing kit back on, just in case the fairing kit's going to get in my way. I don't want to have that in the way. So last episode I spoke briefly about these and just pretty much said that I wasn't too sure if they were for this bike or not, because when I purchased it off of my uncle, they were just in a box sort of on their own, so I wasn't too sure what they were. They were just a bit of a question mark, and I didn't think too much of them anyway. So after having a look further into them, I have found the box for them. So they are the boxes here. So they are FX CNC Racing. So I gave that a quick Google. They come up on eBay, AliExpress, and a bunch of other places, also on the FX CNC site itself. I'm not too sure how good they are, not too sure how good the anodized gold on there will be, whether or not it'll last long, but I'm sure I'll probably get at least a year or so out of it before that anodized gold does start to fade off, and then later on I can probably just upgrade to another set. But yeah, after having a further look, I've lined these up. So this is the gear lever side, so I've sort of lined it up here and just have had a quick look at it all. And this one's pretty easy. You just got to make sure you get the correct adjustments on that when you put it on, so that the gears are changing correctly. The more difficult side is actually the brakes. So when it comes to the brakes, you've obviously got, your brake lever. I've already unscrewed these two bolts just so I can have a look behind it to see what's going on. So basically behind it you've got, so obviously you've got your cylinder here, and then you've also got this little switch down here. So basically that's all connected to the brake lever by those springs, and basically what that does is every time you push down on your brake lever, it just pulls these springs and basically pulls that switch out, which then is wired into the brake light harness, and then it just switches your brake light on and off. So with this one, I do know with the newer bikes, the newer R6s, and just other newer bikes in general, they do have the brake oil pressure switch. So basically that just deletes this whole system here where it's all on springs. So you just delete that whole system. You basically chop the wire and rewire it up to the oil pressure switch, which basically goes into your cylinder here. And my apologies, my father walked in and had to pause the video. So basically with this one here, so I think I was talking about the oil pressure switch. So yeah, these originally they run the one with the cable. So you basically just get that one and it goes into here. And then it's sort of like its own little extension out of here, and then you just bolt it back in. After that, you do need to re-bleed your cylinder because you might get some air. You will get some air in there. But I don't have that. This didn't come with the kit. I'm not too sure if you can get them for this bike. I'm pretty sure you can. It's all universal. You just chuck it in, rewire it up. It's pretty simple. It's just two wires. But yeah, so I'm going to try and utilize the spring setup again because that's all mine came with. So basically these ones here have like this little bracket here. Most of the sets don't come with this little bracket to go onto the new resets, so that's why people opt out and go for the oil pressure switch instead. But this one has come with this, and I'm pretty sure this is for that. So you just basically chuck it in through the hole on this one, and this basically goes on the back side of this. So I'm going to try and get all of that lined up and get the spring in there and operational. I've never done one of these before, so it is a bit of a puzzle piece and it is a little bit confusing. So I'm just going to take my time with it and do it one step at a time so that I'm not confusing myself. But with this, I can either utilize the old spring, or it does come with a new one in the kit, so I may have to use that. But what I'm thinking to do with that one, because it doesn't have sort of like a little slot there for it to go around, on that one I may have to just chuck it where that thread is in there, the spring. So like hook the spring around there and then tighten that down on the spring, so that way when I'm operating the pedal it's going to pull that spring. So I think that might be the way to go about it. But yeah, I'm just gonna muck around with it, see how I go with that. I will do the brake side first because it is the most difficult one. So I'll get the camera set up, and yeah, I'll just sort of hack into it and see what I can do and see if I can figure it out. Alrighty, so I've set all this up just sort of loose, just because I'm mucking around with it, trying to make sure I'm doing it all correctly before I go putting Loctite or anything like that on it, and sending it all home. So pretty much I've just got this sort of mocked up with the old spring. That seems to work, but I'm going to need to use the new spring down there anyway, because as you can see, you can sort of, comes with this long part on it for you to trim yourself. So basically you make up your own size spring, so you don't have your brake light permanently on. So this one here is a bit too tight, the stock one, so it is putting a little bit of pressure on that switch and turning the brake light on. But when I pull it off and then re-brake, it all seems to work and operate, so that's good. Another weird thing too is this little side mounting part here, this little bracket, the silver bracket there, you can see that the switch is in. It only came with one screw, so, but when I've tried to line it up with those other holes near it, they're actually a bigger bolt hole than the one that's in it. And then there are two holes the same, but you can see the other hole there on the bracket. They don't line up with those two holes anyway, so they're not spaced out enough. So what I'm thinking is maybe it's just only meant to have that one bolt in there, because it's only holding that in anyway. So what I'll do is I'll just chuck some Loctite on that and tighten it up as much as I can, and that should be alright, because it's only going to have like the tiniest bit of pull pressure on it from the spring anyway. So I'll get this new one all that's not the spare, but I just had this one, I just made this one up real quick because I thought I was going to need the two, but that's when I learnt that the holes aren't spaced out correctly anyway, so I'm just going to use the one original one. So yeah, I'll get this spring all set up in there now, and I'll get that all Loctite and tightened in there, and then I'll get that all tightened back on, and I'll go over everything and Loctite what I need to Loctite, and that should be it for that one, other than the pedal. I've got that up there on the bench, so I'll get that in there as well. You can basically pick which one you want here, and then I'll move on to the other side and get that one all set up. I did mark this so that because you completely delete the old original one and you just chuck that on, so I marked out where that's meant to go, so I just went up the same amount, so that should be fine. I'll tighten all that up too, but yeah, I'll set the camera back up and we'll get into it. Also, another quick note, I wasn't too sure what these spacers were for originally, because I originally thought they were to space out the cylinder here, but it's not for that, because when I put the spacers in, the bolts don't go through far enough. So from what I've gathered, because I do have another two more up on the bench, so 4 in total, I'm pretty sure they are for all of your pegs. So you have one spacing your big foot pegs that your feet are on, and then again on your levers. So I'm pretty sure they're for that. I could be wrong, but I've had a look at it, and I think, that's probably what it's there for, rather than just having this peg just face straight up on the bearing. It's got that spacer in it to sort of protect the bearing. So I think it's for that. I can't find anything else that it would go on to, so fingers crossed it's that. If I find anything else, I think I've got some pictures, so I might have another look at the pictures and see if that is actually what they're for. But yeah, I'll get back into this and get it all done and hop onto the other side. Okay, so I've tried going off of this rear part here, where it all connects onto, and I tried to go from the switch to this part here with the spring, but from the beginning I kind of had a feeling that that wasn't going to work anyways. So when you press down on the brake lever, pushes the spring the wrong way. It actually pushes it back in and doesn't pull it out. So we needed to pull out to activate that brake light. So what I've done was I was taking another look, and I've basically found on the rear part here, it's got this little thread part. So again, it's even smaller than the one here, and I checked in the box and the packet, and I can't find anything that screws into there. So I'm assuming what you do is you sit this upright like that, and then have the spring come down from here down onto the lever. That way, when you're pushing on the lever, it's just pulling that spring and that switch straight out. I've already set up something. I had a bolt in there, and I put the spring around it and tested it, and it works perfectly. But like I said, I can't find anything in the packet to go in there, so I'm assuming it probably would have been like a little screw with like a little hole through it, where you get the spring and you just hook it into here and then down to there. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Loctite this in there. So basically what this is I've set it up so that I've got two washers. I've got one plastic sort of nylon one, and then a metal one on the back, and then I've got a lock nut. I'm just going to screw this lock nut in all the way up here, just enough so that I can get the spring wrapped around it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close it in on the spring so it holds it a bit more, rather than just wrapping it around that bolt and having it loose. It might come off. I'll give that a go and see how we go with that. So it's basically there. It's not hitting anything. It's getting close, but there's still plenty of space, and that works, and that's all in there tight. So it's not ideal, but you can't see it too much, so it's not too bad. It is temporary. I am going to get that oil, the brake oil or brake fluid pressure switch, and I'm just gonna put that in and rewire it and just completely get rid of this this spring setup, because yeah, it's not exactly ideal, but it'll do for now. Oh yeah, I've just bent the spring out a bit more, so now it's completely clearing everything. Yeah, that'll be good like that for a little while, just until I get the proper switch for it and get it set up properly. You can do it like that, and that will last, but it's just a lot cleaner and easier to get that other one. I'll get all of this tightened up now. I'll go over all the screws and make sure everything's all good, and that should be good for that one. And I'll quickly jump over to the other side and give that a whirl, and that should be it. Cool. Alrighty, so that's all on there. I do need to chuck some Loctite on this one and this one. Off camera as well, I chucked some Loctite in these because they were loose and they didn't have any Loctite. So basically, whatever's moving on the bike, whatever part moves, just chuck a little bit of Loctite on it. Not a crazy amount, just enough so it doesn't, you know, back out the bolt that's holding it in. But other than that, these are all in. You just adjust this and the little one back here to wherever you want it, and then you just tighten it all up. Also, another thing too, I worked out what those spaces were for. So the ones that I put behind here that I thought were for the pegs are not actually for the pegs. What made me realize that was when I put this on, this part here was just very close to the chain, and that's when I sort of, you know, the light switch went on in my head and I thought, okay, so the little gold spaces in there are the ones I'm talking about, so that's where they're supposed to be. I'm 99.9% sure of that, because it brings it out away from the chain, otherwise the chain's just going to hit that. So with the other side, I chucked them here, just because, yeah, I wasn't thinking that they were meant to go in there. That completely slipped my mind, but it makes sense because there's 2 on each side, there's 4 in total, so I just figured that you need something to space or to block off the bearing from getting hit or something. So what I'll do is I'll take these off and take that off and put the spaces behind here, and that'll fix that issue there. But yeah, other than that, that's looking really awesome. All the gears work too. I've went through all of them. All the brakes work. The brake light works. That's all good. So I'll get all of that set up and tightened up off camera, but that's basically the gist of it. Also, I found this too. So I'm pretty sure this was that screw that was meant to go on the back here to hold that spring that I was talking about. I ended up finding that stuck in the box, so I'm pretty sure that was meant to be it, because it makes more sense having this come out more. That way the spring's not on that angle that you can see it's on. It'll just, you've got more length to have the spring straight, but it works perfectly fine anyway, and I feel like that's a better setup that I've got with the lock nut and the washers and the plastic washer in there anyway. This will just come loose all the time and just be a nuisance, but I will keep it just in case my one doesn't work. But yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So next episode, I am definitely up to getting the rest of the fairing kit on and bolted up. Yeah, I just wanted to do that first because, yeah, that would have got in the way if I put the fairing kit on. I would have had to come back off anyway. That was very tedious. It was a lot to work out as a puzzle piece, and with these rear sets too, none of them come with instructions. I tried to look it up online for instructions, but there's nothing there. It literally just says on the description of the product, no instructions included, have rear set fitted by professional. So yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, if you're mechanically minded, you can sort of sit back and have a look at it all and piece it together like I did. It took me a little bit. I was probably there for maybe the good part of an hour and a half or so, just because I was taking my time and I didn't want to stuff anything up, and I ended up working it all out anyway. But yeah, that looks really incredible. As you can see, that's awesome, and way more adjustability on that, and it's really going to tie in well with the rest of the bike and the fairing kit that I have going. I do have these as red. They were red when it came, so I don't want to switch them out to gold because I feel like it'll be a little bit too much gold. I might keep them red. There is some blue on the fairing kit, so I might even change them out for the anodized blue. That might look really good too, but I'll keep them on there for now because they're still in good nick, and they do have your adjusters on here too, so I'll leave that. Yeah, the paint on the handlebars looks really good this morning too. That as well I've got to slip all that back in, but yeah. Thanks for tuning in again, guys. If you're liking everything, share it, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. It goes a long way, it helps me out. But yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.